Hello and welcome to ThePrint. Today I will be speaking about defense expenditure. It is that time of the year when the budget exercises commences for the next financial year. It is also the time for fresh debates on the guns versus butter conundrum. The defense of the nation has been and will remain the first and foremost priority of any government, as defense cannot be outsourced. The question that remains is how much should the nation spend towards defense in the face of equally pressing requirements, healthcare and education to infrastructure development. It is not an easy question to answer, particularly when a section of the polity is convinced that defense expenditure is a sunk cost in an era where armed conflict is supposedly remote. Both are dangerous assumptions in the context of national security. A country decides how much is enough depending on the threat it faces, both external and internal. Defense expenditure can be likened to an insurance premium. The greater the risk to be covered, the greater the premium. Similarly, the greater the number of threats a nation faces, the more it will have to allocate in terms of the defense budget. There is one major difference. While the insurance kicks in only after an untoward incident has occurred, the premium paid in terms of the defense budget can prevent an incident from happening in the first instance. The premium in itself is the deterrence. Ukraine is a case in point. Even in the face of growing threats, it did not adequately prepare its armed forces. The lack of adequate deterrent emboldened Russia to launch its special military operations. Since the conflict began, Ukraine has received more than $75 billion in aid from the United States alone, out of which 61% is military aid. If the assistance provided by other NATO countries were to be included, this figure easily crosses the $100 billion mark. A fraction of this spent on building up the required levels of deterrence could have possibly averted the Russian invasion in the first place. However, that is not all. The war has left in its wake a trail of death and destruction in Ukraine. The entire country has been devastated, not unlike Germany at the end of World War II. Estimates differ and are only growing as the war drags on. A March 23 report puts the cost of reconstruction at $411 billion for the damage caused during the first year of the war alone. This does not even take into account the human cost in terms of total killed and wounded, both civilian and military, and the over 10 million people displaced internally and externally. If only a fraction of this colossal amount had been spent on defense, a disaster of this magnitude, if not totally forestalled, could at least have been mitigated. Against this backdrop, India would do well to pragmatically reassess its national security needs. Another fallacy is that money spent on defense are sunk costs. In actuality, both the capital and revenue expenditure incurred by the armed forces spur the economy and in fact give a good return on investment. Of the rupees 5.94 lakh crores allocated for defense expenditure in the financial year 23-24, capital outlay pertaining to modernization and infrastructure development accounts for rupees 1.63 lakh crores. 75% of this has been earmarked for the domestic industry, which is roughly rupees 1 lakh crore. In effect, this much of the outlay is being ploughed back into the economy, creating employment opportunities and spurring growth. Every single order given to an Indian company benefits the local ecosystem, especially the micro, small and medium enterprises, which are the feeder units for the bigger players in the military industrial complex. This trickle-down effect benefits a large segment of the population scattered all over the country. These orders given by the armed forces are contributing to wealth creation. To quote one example, the share prices of Hindustan Aeronautics Limited have risen from around rupees 1,180 on October 22 to rupees 2,052 in September 23, a gain of approximately 42% in just 1 year. This would in turn translate to more bonuses for their workers and better dividends to the shareholders. The armed forces get the equipment needed for modernization and the companies get their profits. A win-win situation for all. The same is true for revenue expenditure, a large chunk of which goes into maintenance and operating expenditure. All the equipment in the inventory has to be maintained to keep it battle-worthy, and most of it is continuously in use along our borders on land, sea and air. Troops have to be housed, clothed and fed. All these myriad activities are sourced from the local market, from stationery to spares, clothing to condiments. Small-time traders in the vicinity of military establishments are the beneficiaries, as is evident from the large number of shops dealing in military requirements. Since units and establishments are located in all parts of the country, the benefits too are spread out, including to the remotest rural communities and border areas. Vocal for local is not just an empty slogan, but is espoused strongly in letter and spirit. A number of contracts are given to local cooperatives in the border areas, even though prices might be marginally higher than what is available in the plains. For example, most of the army requirements in Arunachal Pradesh are sourced through the Jung, large-sized, multi-purpose cooperative society limited. Similarly, many of the requirements in Ladakh are met through local ventures, thereby greatly benefiting the local population. The local populations too, particularly in border areas, recognize the advantages of having military garrisons in or near their towns and villages. This is not only because of enhanced security, but also due to the resultant economic prosperity. This is borne out by the fact that whenever discussions about relocating a particular unit arise, local communities vociferously protest such moves to the point that their concerns even reach the floor of Parliament. Increased allocations for defence should be seen through the prism of peace and development, with expenditure considered as an investment that yields handsome returns. Peace is a prerequisite for development, and it can only prevail if we remain prepared for war. For an Atmanirbhar Bharat, there has to be a Bharat. This is General Naravane for ThePrint.